I lived. I lived. The storms are over. The wind has died down. I have not looked outside to see if there's any damage. There might be a tree branch sitting in the middle of my truck right now. But I have lived, I have here, and let's talk just a bit about what is going on in the news of the day. The Fed has come down and said they will do a rate hike, just like they've been saying every day since March. It's just the next meeting, the next meeting, the next meeting. But we'll talk about what the decision was actually made now that this is all said and done, and some of the effects of the inflation we've already seen here. In other news, Nancy Pelosi has investigated herself and found that she did nothing wrong. Surprise, surprise. In relation to insider trading. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that. Jim Jordan, is getting pulled into the text message scandal, and nobody's looking at Nancy Pelosi's text messages from that day either. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with there. Plus, an MTA manager got busted for putting a blow-up doll in his passenger seat. Is he doing it to ride into the high-occupancy vehicle lane? Nobody will ever know. He says no, but it looks like he might have been as well. It is going to be all this and more. Let's go, Brandon. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, Ed Heads. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar, and we have got a bunch of news to get to today. They're packing it up once again. Plus, we had 3 of them come over from yesterday, and we are going to do a thing that I like and thing that I hate, because no matter how bad the news gets, we always have to have fun as we finish out the news for the day. So, let's get into it. Let's get started here. Let's get the live chat up here so you guys can see what we're doing here. See how Gabriella Ford is giving us vasf.tech. Should we go to that link? I have no idea. Maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't here. And thank you once again. I never thank the musicians who provide the music off the background, even though they are saying, you can't be monetized anymore. That's okay. I turned AdSense off. But thank you to Lo-Fi Geek for putting up the Christmas platform that we're doing here. Let's get right into it. But before we get started, do make sure you guys go check out TurnsOfPagesProductions.com. We are aiming to build a website to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs, where we will carry great shows such as the Daily Ignoramus, the Breakdown with Breckenhoff, the R-Rated Conservative, the Freckles and Brit Show, and the Porch Boys. Watch for a new fundraiser coming up here. Thank you to the fans already for $580 that have gotten us started, ready to go, ready to reach out to people to make sure that we can get the website up and running. We've got to make sure that Bobby Joe gets paid because we like Bobby Joe around here. So definitely go and check that out. We're still looking to get another probably good $1,600 to go get started here, which will be coming in the form of a Give, Send, Go. I do have to do a little bit more research into Give, Send, Go to make sure that I understand what it is that I'm getting into here. But the new fundraiser will be coming up very shortly here, and well, we'll be asking you for $1, $5, $10, anything that you can spare to come and help us get started and help us get our new website up and running here and help bring you news by the people for the people. All right, let's get into your finance for the morning. Speaking of finance, looking at your Dow. Your Dow, it spent a large portion of the day slightly down yesterday. And as soon as they announced the new Fed meeting and the new thing that we'll be talking about with the Fed here, it kind of jumped up throughout the rest of the day here. It gained 383 points. It gained a full percent on yesterday and will probably creep back up to about 36,000 if everything still stays going well for the federal government coming in here. We'll probably see another 36,000 before Christmas, and you know, at those family dinners, oh hey look, at Christmas, oh Biden brought it back up to 36,000, but that is what we're seeing here, so that's where we watch. It's what we see coming off of this, and we will continue to watch finance throughout the rest of the year. On your Bitcoin, let's get a refresh on that. Bitcoin stayed steady overnight at $48,820 and 70 US cents. So It's holding steady. We'll see where that goes. If it starts to drop off again, it's probably going to be Christmas present related. It's not going to be any sort of crash in the markets here, but it is one to continue to watch as we go along here. It is down $64 from yesterday. On your scrap metal prices, let's refresh that one too. More red as we go along. Copper, steel, and aluminum. Red all across the board, all the way through copper, all the way through steel. Red, 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 red. Aluminum. All in the red. We don't see a green until we get down to car and truck batteries. Catalytic converters are still coming up. Compressors are down, alternators are down, carbide is down, hard drives are down, motherboards are down, and power supplies are down. So all over the place, everything that we see coming off of here, there is red all over the place with this industrial. So I don't know if it's a lot of people are off for the holidays, for their holiday breaks from the union job, if they're just slowing down some of the manufacturing or what's going on with this. But yeah, your scrap metal prices are definitely going down. All right, let's see what IBD has to say for the morning. And I did archive that for just in case, because usually if I have to go and get it off IBD's front page, they block it out and say, well, this is only available for members, but it doesn't appear to have done that. So let's see what it is they have to say. Dow futures rise after market roars on Fed move. AMD, Nvidia, Lilly flash buy signals. This is from Ed Carson. Dow Jones futures rose solidly Thursday morning, along with S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ futures. The stock market rally roared back Wednesday after the Federal Reserve sped up its bond taper and forecast 3 Fed rate hikes next year. The Fed rate hike forecast was more hawkish than expected, but the major indices turned positive, then raced higher as Jerome Powell spoke after the policy meeting. Late Wednesday, home builder Lennar reported disappointing results. Lennar stock fell solidly overnight. AMD and Nvidia stock rocketed from their 50-day lines Wednesday, soaring 8% and 7.5% respectively. Google parent Alphabet reclaimed its 50-day line. Applied Materials rebounded from its 50-day line as it works a new base. J.B. Hunt Transportation is hovering near new highs. Arista Networks broke out. Eli Lilly soared on strong guidance, breaking out after flashing early entries soon after the open. AMD and Nvidia offered early entries, but those pullbacks were a bit steep. AMAT offered a bullish bounce, while J.B. Hunt is still close to its 50-day line, and Google stock is now at least setting up, while Arista and Lilly stock were actual breakouts. Tesla rose 1.8% on Wednesday to $975.99 after just undercutting Tuesday's lows intraday. Tesla stock is still below its 50-day line, but the EV giant looks much better than rivals including Rivian, Lucid, and especially China startups such as NIO. Rivian reports earnings for the first time since its IPO Thursday night. AMD, Nvidia, Arista, Google, and Tesla are on the IBD leaderboard. AMD and ANET joined Swing Trader. Google stock is on IBD long-term leaders. AMD, Nvidia, Applied Materials, and ANET stock are on the IBD 50. We're going to hold off on this because this is going to be top story for the day, so we'll skip this paragraph this section completely. On your futures, Dow futures rose 0.6% versus fair value, S&P 500 futures advanced 0.65%, and NASDAQ 100 futures climbed 0.6%. The Bank of England raised interest rates Thursday morning to 0.25% from 0.1% to combat soaring inflation. On Wednesday, the Federal Reserve agreed to speed up and boost its bond taper and signaled it will hike rates 3 times in 2022. The 10-year Treasury yield was flat. Crude oil prices edged higher, pairing overnight gains. Copper futures jumped 3%. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. A lot of stuff moving, a lot of stuff changed over the fact that the taper announcement was done, so we'll see what happens with that. There's the archived one. Let's grab one from CNBC real quick. Dow futures up 200 points following Fed decision to aggressively wind down asset purchases. Excuse me. From Tanaya Makil. U.S. stock futures rose sharply in early Thursday trading after the Federal Reserve signaled it would be aggressively tapering and sees 3 interest rate hikes in 2022. Futures on the Dow Jones Industrial Average jumped about 222 points. S&P 500 and Nasdaq futures added 0.7% each. Shares of companies that have done well in previous rate hiking cycles led pre-market gainers. Material stocks, FMC Corp. and Freeport McMoran both rose more than 3% ahead of the opening bell. Bank stocks also rose across the board, with JP Morgan Chase, Citigroup, and Bank of America all up about 0.6%. In transportation news, Delta reported it now expects to see a profit of $200 million in the fourth quarter. After previously projecting a loss, shares rose 2.2% on the news. In other central banking news, the Bank of England announced it will hike its key policy rate to 0.25%. Markets were awaiting separate policy decisions from the European Central Bank. There is also more economic news on tap, with weekly jobless claims and housing starts out at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Following the Fed news. Breaking. Weekly jobless claims totaled 206,000, rising above pandemic low. Following the Fed news, traders accelerated their own expectations for interest rate increases. Fed funds futures trading now points to a 63% chance of the first quarter percentage point increase coming in May of 2022. With chances also rising to about 44% that the central bank could make its first move as soon as March, according to CME FedWatch tool. So that's what we'll see coming off that. Let's move out of this here. Let's get into some of the big news of the day. We're going to start with a happy birthday, before we do anything else, from Representative Peter Meyer. Happy 230th anniversary of the Bill of Rights to everyone but the wannabe authoritarians, to whom the concept of positive and negative liberty, freedom from versus freedom to, is an unbearable impediment to their personal lust for power. I don't wish those people a happy anything. Yeah, see, that's absolutely correct, but, everybody else is going to come out and say, like Brooklyn Dad Defiant, that soy motherfucker came out right away. One of the first things that he said on the same topic was, the Bill of Rights turns 230 years old today, and there's still nothing in there about violent insurrection. You don't have a freedom to a violent insurrection. That was way too manly a voice for Brooklyn Dad Defiant. But, of course, the comments in the peanut gallery came back off of this, but that is something to remember when we come into this. It is not, we let you have guns. It's not, we let you have free speech. It is that we have restricted ourselves from making laws that bar you from having guns, that bar you from speaking publicly, that bar you from gathering peacefully. We restrict ourselves from making these laws. That's what the founders intended. We restrict ourselves from using the government to go after you and persecute you. We restrict ourselves from denying you legal counsel and making you face the court system on your own. So that's what we see off that. Thank you for that. Starting here with Reuters today. Fed sees 3 interest rate hikes in 2022 as inflation fight begins. From Howard Schneider. The Federal Reserve, signaling its inflation target has been met, on Wednesday said it would end its pandemic-era bond purchases in March, paving the way for 3/4 percentage point interest rate increases by the end of 2022, as it exits from policies enacted at the start of the health crisis. In new economic projections released following the end of a 2-day policy meeting, officials forecast that inflation would run at 2.6% next year, compared to the 2.2% projected as of September, and the unemployment rate would fall to 3.5%. Those numbers already suck. As a result, officials at the median projected the Fed's benchmark overnight interest rate would need to rise from its current near-zero level to 0.90% by the end of 2022, with continued increases in 2023 to 1.6% and 2024 to 2.1%, required to pull inflation back to the central bank's 2% target. Eventual rate hikes, the Fed said, would now hinge solely on the path of the job market. With inflation having exceeded 2% for some time, the committee expects it will be appropriate to maintain the current near-zero interest rates until labor markets have returned to full employment. The Fed said in a statement that began to pin down more thoroughly the central bank's normalization of monetary policy following nearly 2 years of extraordinary efforts to nurse the economy through the fallout of the pandemic. That's still underway with the new Omicron variant, adding uncertainty about the course of the economy. But the Fed, at this point, said economic growth is expected to be 4% next year, an increase over the 3.8% projected in September. Jerome Powell is scheduled to hold a news conference at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time to elaborate on the new policy statement and answer questions about the central bank's economic outlook. So there's a lot of stuff packed into a very, very short article. A lot of stuff to sit back and watch. Now, as far as the rate hikes, that's a reasonable number. And that's looking at rates, the borrowing rates that the Fed had before. And a lot of the problem that we had for this is the fact that they dropped everything to near zero so they could come back out and print excessive money because, well, nobody had any money. Nobody went to work, and they still needed to keep some sort of money flowing through the system in order to make sure that the banks stayed up. And of course, this all went to the big banks. You know, a lot of your smaller banks were either failing or in the process of failing right now. So these numbers are relatively normal, but they're hinging on full employment, first off. They're hinging on that. And they're hinging on what the unemployment rate is going to be. They're talking about bringing up 4% economic growth. Part of the problem that we have with that is that once a lot of these big population centers started shutting down their economies, locking down, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do X, you can't do Y. We lost. What did we lose? 36% of the GDP in one quarter? Because a lot of our big finance centers, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, places like that, and even DC proper, the city, not actually the government, was shutting down large swaths of their economy. Our big population centers were stopping. Just plain out stopping. So to have 4% come back, that's arguably that's not as impressive as I'd like it to be. We have had a massive economic rebuilding, bringing us back probably to we lost 36% in quarter 3 of 2020, and if I remember correctly, we gained 30% back in quarter 4. As far as growth now, I haven't seen what the economic growth stats have been throughout the rest of this year. They haven't been making a big deal out of it. I'm guessing that's because they're probably relatively low. But that's what we see coming off of that. And it's the 3.5% unemployment rate. That would be fantastic to see. I would love to see that. But I would also love to see a full labor force participation, a full U6. That's part of the problem I see with what Jerome Powell is doing with this and when he's trying to come up with the numbers. And you always do notice that too. When it comes to when they have to make a Fed decision, they always use U1, not U6. First-time unemployment claims versus ongoing joblessness and labor force participation. So there's a lot of stuff to see here. I'm not completely convinced that this was the right decision to do right now, but something needed to be done to stop the banks from just running away with spending. We are going to have a little bit of a teaser, though. We're going to come back and listen to Auntie Nancy here for just a second. I got to step up for a half a second. So let's have a listen to what she had to say, and I'll be right back.
Should members of Congress and their spouses be banned from trading individual stocks while serving in Congress?
No, I don't know to this. second one. We have a responsibility to report in the stock on the stock, but I'm not familiar with that 5-month review. But if people aren't reporting, they should be.
Why should they be banned?
Because this is a free market, and we're a free market economy. They should be able to participate in that.
Should members of Congress and their spouses be banned from trading individual stocks while serving in Congress?
No, I don't know to the second one. We have a responsibility to report in the stock on the stock, but I'm not familiar with that 5-month review. But if people aren't reporting, they should be.
Why should they be banned?
Because this is a free market, and we're a free market economy. They should be able to participate in.
All right, sorry about that. Sorry to make you listen to Auntie Nancy for any more than when we have to be. Now, I wouldn't exactly call what we have here a free market either, but teaser alert, we'll be talking about that in just a bit. All right, let's have a look at what's going on here with the spending bill. From the Washington Post, Democrats' $2 trillion spending plan in political peril as talks between Biden and Manchin appear to hit a snag. This is from Tony Rahm and Sung Min Kim, and this is over at the Washington Post, where democracy goes to die in darkness. A push by Senate Democrats to pass a roughly $2 trillion tax and spending measure before Christmas appeared in new political peril on Wednesday as talks soured between President Biden and Senator Joe Manchin III over the size and scope of the package. The gaps between the two sides remains immense, with Biden seeking to safeguard his economic agenda from significant cuts while Manchin continues to insist on steep spending reductions, according to 3 people familiar with the matter who requested anonymity to describe the sensitive negotiations. The sticking points include the fate of the expanded child tax credit, one of these sources said, a Democratic priority that Manchin hopes to defund from the bill in full. The current Senate proposal extends an existing federal program that pays out expanded monthly tax benefits to roughly 35 million families with young children. Democrats broadly see it as a critical endeavor toward combating child poverty, but it is set to expire at the end of this year, reverting to its older, smaller state unless lawmakers reauthorize it as part of the bill known as the Build Back Bullshit Act. But the standoff over its future only reflects the growing divide between Biden and members of his own party, even as the White House said Manchin continue to frame their private talks in positive, productive terms. Without his support, Senate Democrats simply lack the votes in the narrowly divided chamber to finalize their roughly $2 trillion proposal to overhaul the nation's healthcare, education, climate, immigration, and tax laws. On Wednesday, Manchin swatted away questions about the negotiations, refusing at one point to address the child tax credit. His office did not immediately respond to a request for comment. So it's looking like Manchin is still saying, hell no, we can't do this much this quickly. Now, I've had a theory about this for a little while, as far as what's going on with the Build Back Bullshit agenda. And this goes along with the too much too fast argument that I've made numerous times as many more agenda points for the Democrats get filibustered or fail. There are big points to this, and one of the things that I look at when we do something like this massive spending, tax and spending bill that we see going on here, one of the big things that I've always noted with this is the fact that they're trying to do too much too fast. I feel like what we're seeing off the Build Back Bullshit bill are all priorities that would have been given out under the Clinton administration, of course with her having a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate and a comfortable House majority. Honk honk. Don't worry, that wasn't the plan. Honk honk. Everything was totally free and fair in 2016. Honk honk. No, it wasn't. No, it was Russia. It was Russia. Honk honk. But I feel like if the tables had turned in 2016, we would still be seeing a lot of this, and possibly still be spending ourselves and inflating ourselves into oblivion, but just doing it much slower. I don't think the coronavirus would have done a goddamn thing. We wouldn't still be talking about a coronavirus right now. That would be number one. we wouldn't be doing that. Whether or not it would have been released, it probably still would have, because China had a ticking demographic time bomb problem, but Hong Kong, it was totally organically grown, and it didn't come back out of anything Hong Kong. It wasn't engineered in the lab Hong Kong. But it would have just been like the swine flu. It would have disappeared. And it's the same thing with this. For 4 years, they didn't have the chance to have the agenda, the Democratic agenda. I don't believe this has anything to do with Joe Biden and his agenda. This is the vast, left-wing, power-hungry Democrat agenda in large. I don't think Biden's making his decisions, but what I do think is that, yes, under Hillary Clinton, for 4 years, this would have been rolled out. Chunk by chunk, one piece at a time. They wouldn't be trying to cram this through as one massive bill. First at $6 trillion, then at $3 trillion, and then now at almost $2 trillion. It would have been just, okay, well, let's do this first quarter 2017. Oh, let's do this second quarter 2017. You get the picture as we go down to like third quarter 2018, fourth quarter 2019, etc. We would have still seen all these spending packages, just a lot slower. That's what that really bothers me, the fact that they're trying to cram this through. Like there's some sort of deadline that they have to meet on a global panel or something or somewhere. I have no idea. But that's what we see coming out of that. From the Blaze. Analysis finds that inflation will require the average U.S. household to spend about $3,500 more in 2021. From Alex Nitzberg. As Americans suffer the severe economic consequences of soaring inflation, the average U.S. household will have to shell out more than $3,500 more in 2021 in order to match their consumption levels from prior years, according to an analysis by the Penn Wharton budget model. We estimate that inflation in 2021 will require the average U.S. household to spend about $3,500 more in 2021 to achieve the same level of consumption of goods and services as in recent previous years. The analysis notes. Such massive financial burden demonstrates the dramatic ramifications of rising inflation. Moreover, we estimate that lower-income households spend more than their budget on goods and services that have been more impacted by inflation. Lower-income households will have to spend about 7% more, while higher-income households will have to spend about 6% more, the analysis says. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Consumer Price Index shows significant price increases over the last year, marking the biggest 12-month jump in nearly 4 decades. The All Items Index rose 6.8% for the 12 months ending November, the largest 12-month increase since the period began, ending in June of 1982. So this is the highest level in my lifetime, because I was born in April of 84. According to the BLS, the index for all the items, less food and energy, rose 4.9% over the last 12 months, while the energy index rose 33.3% over the last year. The food index increased 6.1%. These changes are the largest 12-month increase in the last 13 years in the respective series. So, there you go, $3,500 extra dollars on just the same kind of stuff. I can definitely see it. I can definitely see where I was last year financially versus where I am now. I could definitely see $3,500 extra. Absolutely. Last year at this time, always money in the bank. No, no problem, no anything else. And I'm, making the same wage and restricted to 40 hours no matter what. Always at least $1,000 in the bank no matter what. And now, I'm sitting here wondering if I can take a long trip just because I know it'll cost me 3 tanks of fuel. So, there's definitely a difference. There's definitely something changing here. Something to see. But that's what we see off that. From CNN. Kraft will pay you $20 not to make cheesecake for Christmas. This is fine. Everything is fine. This is fine. Nothing to worry about here. From Danielle Wiener-Bronner. Kraft is using its cream cheese shortage as a marketing opportunity. For just a few days this holiday season, a limited number of people will be able to spend $20 on dessert and charge it to Kraft. Owner of Philadelphia Cream Cheese, the premise: people who can't bake cheesecakes because they can't find cream cheese get another baked good on Kraft's dime. Here's how it works. People interested in the offer can visit a special website set up by Kraft. On December 17th and 18th, up to 1,800 of them will be able to nab the right to get reimbursement for a holiday treat. They'll be able to submit receipts to the company a few weeks later. For Kraft, the campaign is a way to soften the blow of empty cream cheese shelves and keep customers thinking about Philadelphia cream cheese without souring on the brand. Well, I don't use that brand anyway, so... Cream cheese is the latest hard-to-come-by grocery item in a year of shortages. A spike in cream cheese demand during the pandemic made it difficult to keep shelves stocked, Kraft said. Last year, with more than people baking and eating at home, the demand for cream cheese jumped about 18% compared to 2019. It stayed at that high level in 2021, according to Kraft. Meanwhile, restaurants are also ordering more of the product. Junior's Cheesecake, which sources its cream cheese from Philadelphia, said last week that it's been struggling to get enough supply of the key ingredient. It's been forced to occasionally pause cheesecake production. According to owner, New York City bagel shops have also reportedly struggled to get enough cream cheese. To keep up with demand, Kraft is pumping funds into its Philadelphia brand, said Basak Oguz, Philadelphia marketing director. We're investing millions of dollars in Philadelphia cream cheese, she told CNN Business in an email, adding that funds will help increase the production capacity. Oguz said the company has temporarily stopped making a very limited number of cream cheese, Philadelphia products rather, so it can increase production of more popular items. This is fine. Everything is fine. Here's an interesting one for you guys. Republicans who assailed Biden's stimulus bill are embracing the money. This is from Ellen Rappaport. At her annual budget address this month, Governor Kristi Noem, Republican of South Dakota, blamed President Biden's economic policies for rising prices, derided the giant handout of federal stimulus funds, and suggested that she had considered refusing the money over ideological objections. But, like many Republican officials, Ms. Noem has found it hard to say no to her state's share of the $1.9 trillion pandemic relief aid that Democrats passed along party lines in March. Ms. Noem explained to her fellow legislators how critical these federal funds were to South Dakota and outlined how she would use some of the nearly $1 billion slated for her state to invest in local water projects, making housing more affordable, and build new daycare centers for those questioning her choice to take the money. Ms. Noem, who has opposed COVID restrictions, including shutdowns and mask mandates, said any pandemic relief funds she rejected would have just gone to other states. It would be spent somewhere other than South Dakota, Ms. Noem said. The debt would still be incurred by the country, and our people would still suffer the consequences of that spending. No state has declined the relief money, and if they had it, would go back to the Treasury Department, not to other states, who would in turn distribute it out to other states. See, that's what the New York Times, a former newspaper, doesn't want to tell you. Republican leaders across the country have been engaged in a similarly awkward dance over the past few months as they accept and often champion money from the $350 billion bucket of state and local aid included in the stimulus bill, which passed Congress without a single Republican vote. In some states like Ohio and Arizona, Republican governors are spending the funds while attempting to undercut the law that allowed the money to flow. Other governors are faulting Congress for not giving their state enough money. Okay, so here's the problem with this. Now, the New York Times will tell you, oh, no, it'll just go back to the Treasury. It can't sit in the Treasury because it's earmarked for something else. It can't do that. That's not the way Congress works. That will get distributed back out for other COVID relief because it was set aside for that. One thing about what goes into the Treasury versus what comes out of the Treasury is it does have to be balanced and accounted for. They can't just have loose money. According to the IRS, 4 years ago, because I had missed the deadline to make the payment and got incurred a penalty, a fine for it from the IRS. This was in 2015 when I had just moved and was still kind of broke at the time. According to them, now I did the math and they were wrong, but according to them, I overpaid by $11.13. And they send me a check every year for $11.13. They don't pile it on to any other refund. They don't apply it to anything else. They send me a check every year for $11.13. And I cut it up every year because they were wrong on their calculation, not me. I am correct on that, and I cut it up every year. But every dollar, every penny in the Treasury has to be accounted for. So because their ledger shows an overpayment on my end of $11.13, they have to pay that out to me. Every penny. And they do every year. So what do you think is going to happen with the Treasury Department with, what is it, $10 billion for South Dakota? They can't just give that back. It doesn't work that way. As much as the New York Times wants you to believe that, it works that way. It's the same thing that this new computer is saying in front of me. I use that with third stimulus check. Because they're currently trying to get me the first one and the second one right now. They're trying to send me those two. I cut both the first and second ones up. And then when I found out that they were going to send me those two, when I got number 3, I did wind up using it. Because they have no choice. They have to send that out. That money was earmarked to come into this household. And it can't just go back into the Treasury. So no one really has no choice. She can either just sit it in savings or spend it on projects, but like it cannot go back to DC and sit in the Treasury. The government won't let it happen. Because it's not earmarked for that, Ron. Because of the way that the ledger in the Treasury works. Like I said, they will send out continually over and over again $11.13. So that's what we see for that. All right, let's listen to Pelosi one more time here because for whatever reason, the temperature change has caused my nose to run like crazy, or maybe I have the fucking coof, who knows? But I gotta step up for just a second again.
That.
Should members of Congress and their spouses be banned from trading individual stocks while serving in Congress?
No, I don't know to the second one. We have a responsibility to report in the stock, on the stock, but I'm not familiar with that 5-month review, but if people aren't reporting, they should be.
Why should they be banned?
Because this is a free market and people, we're a free market economy, they should be able to participate in that.
Should members of Congress and their spouses be banned from trading individual stocks while serving in Congress?
No, I don't know to the second one. We have a responsibility to report in the stock, on the stock, but I'm not familiar with that 5-month review, but if people aren't reporting, they should be.
Why should they be banned?
Because this is a free market and people, we're a free market economy, they should be able to participate in that.
Should members of Congress and their spouses be banned?
All right, so we've listened to this now probably 5 times, and Nancy Pelosi squirm and try to get around this here. There's definitely some stuff to look at with this, and I have some opinions on this. I love that hashtag cancel student loans is trending right now too, because they just realized that they're all going to have to start paying once again. This one is from CNBC. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi opposes banning Congress members from owning individual stocks. We're a free market economy, she says. We're not, but... From Dan Mangan. House Speaker Pelosi scoffed Wednesday at the idea of banning congressional lawmakers and their spouses from owning stock shares of individual companies, despite the possibilities for conflicts of interest between the legislative duties and personal finances. No, Pelosi told reporters at a press conference where she was asked whether she would support such a prohibition. We're a free market economy. They should be able to participate in that. Pelosi's dismissal of the idea of a stock purchase ban came in response to questions about a Business Insider investigative report this week on stock ownership by lawmakers and after controversies over stock purchases by a number of senators since the beginning of the pinko fucking pox pandemic began. The Insider series found that 49 members of Congress and 182 senior-level congressional staffers had violated the so-called Stock Act, which requires public disclosure by themselves and family members within 45 days of sales or purchases of individual stocks, bonds, and commodity figures. The Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge Act, which became law in 2012, is supposed to prevent lawmakers and staffers from engaging in trading on information they glean from their jobs as well as conflicts of interest. But violations of the Stock Act, if sanctioned at all, usually result in fines of just $200. We have a responsibility to report stock trades, Pelosi said on Wednesday. The speaker said that she was not familiar with the findings of the Business Insider series. So, listening to her weasel her way around this, which she does, and we'll be listening to an ethics chief under Obama talking about this as well. Here's the problem. Because of the bastardized form of our republic that our republic has become, people in Congress in the United States make laws that affect their big business buddies that they have stock ownership in. And that was a complaint of Kelly Loeffler. Fuck, that was a complaint of Donald Trump when they brought him in and told him he had to divest of everything because he had foreign holdings. And a lot of these companies do have foreign holdings as well, which means that some of these Congress people are making big money off foreign holdings, but they hold stock in Company X, Company Y, and then they start making laws that put Company X or Company Y's competition out of business. Company X can absorb the cost of it. Company Z, their competition, goes under and their stock goes back up. But it's a free market, it's a private company, and they're just private citizens. No, this is the biggest problem that I've had with this. There are two problems with Congress people that people believe what they are. One is leadership, which they are not, and one is private citizens. Now, one of the solutions that I had with this, one of the things that I thought about when I first started thinking about how do we get out of this, instead of just complaining about how bad this is, how do we actually move forward off of this? And I made a realization. Partially listening to Sticks talk about military and the jab, and myself talk about military and the jab. Now, if you join the military, if you conscript yourself to the military, you do lose a large amount of your rights and privileges. You are, under that contract, government property. It might work differently for officers, but for the most part, I just know grunts. People who are on the ground. And yes, as you're conscripted, you sign that contract. They can put whatever they want in your body as injection. They don't have to tell you jack shit about what it is. That's part of the concern with the commie coup. And unfortunately, while I don't agree with it, if you sign the contract, that's on you. And yes, you get the jab. Because you signed the contract to turn your body over to the federal government to use it for whatever they wanted it to. And that could include experimenting with a drug or a new injection or something else they hope to offer out to the American public. You signed up for that. You signed on the dotted line. I think it's wrong that they would do that. But you freely and willingly signed on the dotted line to do that. Why are Congress people any different? You've conscripted yourself to 2 years of service of the people of your district or your state if you're a senator. And that's under 6 years. You have conscripted yourself under contract to either die in that office or fill out your 6 or 2 year term. How are you not government property at that point? And how is it that you can consider yourself a private citizen? You shouldn't be able to. And yes, you should lose some rights and privileges. I would argue that the Second Amendment should not apply to Congress people. Because it shouldn't. There's no reason to. They've got the military to back them up. They can call up the military at any time. The DC National Guard, the this, the that, the Capitol Police. No, it shouldn't apply to them. If I tried to carry a gun into a federal building, 78 ATF agents would start pulling on me and beating me into the fucking ground into submission. And that's just if it was holstered and concealed. If I was waving it around, that number would increase to 275. Why is Congress any different? And one of the big ones, and part of the reasons I started thinking about this and talking about this is, yes, Congress people make the laws that affect business. Whether for good or for bad. And yes, they make the laws that push GE's competition out, Tesla's competition out, even though they don't like Tesla right now. They make the laws that help Bezos become rich and increase their stock share in Amazon. And I guarantee you that as much as they rail on Bezos and say that he needs to pay his fair share in taxes, they all have Amazon stock, and not a small amount of it. It was actually the subject of a debate in a Discord server, not my Discord server, another one last night, where we talked about what should be done about all this. How do we prevent Congresspeople from making the laws that affect their own stock markets? I have said it right out. I think that Congresspeople should be banned from owning any sort of stock whatsoever. Any financial holdings, any business holdings, any stock. You go to run for office, you divest yourself, and you sell all that shit. And you know who gave me that idea? Nancy Pelosi. Well, how can we ever trust a president like Donald Trump when he's coming in here and he owns all this stock and all these businesses, and all he's going to do is use the presidency to enrich his businesses? He has to divest in all of his businesses. Which didn't actually work. He didn't actually do that, but he should have. I agree with her on that. He should have. He should have been completely divested from every Trump property and every Trump business that there was. But so should Nancy Pelosi. Now, one of the other members in the group said that to run for office, the stock purchases and the stock ownership would be too high a bar to clear, and you should put them into an escrow account and not be able to access them while you're running for Congress. I can see the merit to what he has to say. I don't agree with it, but I can see the merit to that. I think as a show of faith, if you run for Congress, if you run for the Senate, I'm less concerned about the Supreme Court, but in fairness, I think it should extend to them as well. If you're nominated for the Supreme Court, the first thing you should be forced to do is sell all your stock. You are no longer a private citizen. But you're also not a leader. That's the other big problem that we have here. So many of this country has relegated itself to Congress knows best. Because they're our leaders. We elected our leaders. No, you elected your public servants. They work for you, not the other way around. This is not socialist, communist, red fucking Russia. That's what they need to be doing. And if it tanks the fucking market because some of these people are rich, well, that's the price you paid for being a public servant. Now, roll back the regulations and let the market fix itself. That's the way that I see that. Now that I've spent an exorbitant amount of time talking about that, from The Blaze, what a disgusting comment. Former ethics chief, who was nominated by Obama, slams Pelosi for saying lawmakers should not be barred from trading individual stocks. When you have got an Obama guy saying that you're corrupt, you have done fucked up. Because that was the most corrupt presidency in history. That guy might have beaten Nixon. Which is saying something. From Alex Nitzberg. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi does not believe Congress members and their spouses should be prohibited from trading individual stocks, but former director of the Office of Government Ethics Walter Schaub strongly disagrees. It is a free market, she said on Wednesday. They should be able to participate in that. But Schaub, who was nominated by Barack Obama to be the OGE director, who served in the post from January 2013 until he resigned in 2017, decried Pelosi's position on the issue. Nobody kidnapped these members of Congress when they were private citizens, dragged them to Washington, and forced them to be in Congress, he noted. The American people are sick of members of Congress buying and selling stock and creating the appearance of trading on insider information. They should be absolutely banned from trading stocks, he said. Let them buy diversified mutual funds. I don't even care for that. Let them buy government bonds. Yeah, I don't care for that either. But bar them from trading stocks, for crying out loud. According to the Associated Press, Pelosi's last financial disclosure indicated her husband owns millions of dollars of Amazon. Told you! Apple, Comcast, and Visa stocks, and stock options in Google's parent company. The speaker does not own any stocks, Pelosi spokesperson Drew Hamill said, according to Business Insider. As you can see from the required disclosures with which the speaker fully cooperates, these transactions are marked SP for spouse. The speaker has no prior knowledge or subsequent involvement in any transactions. Yeah, no, no, we can't do that workaround. Socialist Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Chavez of New York believes that lawmakers should be barred from owning and trading individual stocks during their time in office. It is absolutely ludicrous that members of Congress can hold and trade individual stock while in office, she tweeted last week. The excess poppy and influence that we should have exercised for the public interest, not our profit. It shouldn't be legal for us to trade individual stocks with the info that we have, okay, puppy? Wait. Why do I agree with Alexandria Ocasio-Chavez? What's going on here? And I mean, she's right too. And like I said, when I was talking about the CNBC article, these people know what's going on because they make the laws. Hell, look at how much they derided Kelly Loeffler for what she did, knowing what was coming out of the pinko fucking pox pandemic. That right there should be enough for everybody else to say, oh shit, you know what? They might be right. But that's what we see off that. Speaking of Pelosi, tonight the House voted on a bipartisan basis to hold Mark Meadows, who has key information on the January 6th attack, in contempt of Congress. In so doing, we fulfill our duty to the Constitution and the nation to find the truth of that dark day. And there's a certification. Mark Meadows is in contempt. From the Associated Press. House votes to hold Mark Meadows in contempt in January 6th probe. But don't worry. We would never use the government to go after our political enemies and persecute them. From Farnoosh Amari and Mary Claire Jalonik. The House voted on Tuesday to hold former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows in contempt of Congress after he ceased to cooperate in the January 6th Selfie Fest committee, making it the first time the chamber has voted to hold a former member in contempt since the 1830s. The near party line 222 to 208 vote is the second time the special committee has sought to punish the witness for defying a subpoena. The vote is the latest show of force by the January 6th panel, and that's what it is, too. It's a show of force. Hey, we can hit you with these fines and put you in jail if you don't do exactly what we say. Which is leaving no angle unexplored and no subpoena unanswered, as it investigates the worst attack on the Capitol in more than 90 days. Lawmakers on the panel are determined to get answers quickly and in doing so reassert the congressional authority that eroded while former President Trump was in office. Jesus Christ. The Associated Press is supposed to be objective. That's the worst part of this. History will be written about these stuff. History will be written about these times and about the work this committee has undertaken, said Benny Thompson of Mississippi, the chairman, and history will not look upon any of you as a martyr. History will look upon you as a victim. The two non-Democrat votes, Representatives Liz Cheney of Wyoming, who is no longer recognized by Wyoming as a Republican, and Adam Kinzinger, whose district is about to be districted out, in favor of the resolution came after 9 Republicans who voted to hold former Trump ally Steve Bannon in contempt in October. While Bannon's case was more clear-cut, he never engaged with the committee at all. Meadows had turned over documents and negotiated for 2 months with the panel about an interview. Meadows also had closer relationships within the Republican caucus, having just left Congress last year. Meadows was also Trump's top aide at the White House, giving him more plausible grounds to claim executive privilege. Bannon had not worked with the White House since 2017. The Justice Department will also be weighing those factors as prosecutors decide whether to move forward with the case. If convicted, Bannon and Meadows could each face up to a year behind bars on each charge. Jamie Raskin, another member of the panel, began Tuesday's debate on the resolution by reading frantic texts from the day of the attack, revealing members of Congress, Fox News anchors, and even Trump's son, urging Meadows to persuade the outgoing president to act quickly to stop the 3-hour assault by people who were dressed up as his supporters. Republicans on Tuesday called the action against Meadows a distraction from the House's work, with one member calling it evil and un-American. Jim Jordan of Ohio praised Meadows. Make no mistake, when Democrats vote in favor of this resolution, they vote to put a good man in prison. Trump also defended Meadows in an interview, saying, I think Mark should do what's right. He's an honorable man. He shouldn't be put through this. And Meadows' attorney, George Terwilliger, defended his client in a statement before the vote, noting that he'd provided documents to the panel and maintaining that he should not be compelled to appear for an interview. So, a lot of stuff that's changing with this, and it does seem like they are going after every Republican they can get their hands on. It looks like they're possibly going to be going with Jim Jordan the same way. Anybody who's a political enemy can get subpoenaed by this and have all their dirty laundry aired to make sure that they can never be elected again. From CNN, op-ed from Chris Cillizza, why the Mark Meadows criminal contempt move is so different. There's a tendency to lump the vote by the House on Tuesday night to recommend criminal contempt charges against former Trump White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows in the same pile as previous House vote to do the same to former political advisor Steve Bannon. After all, both men refused to cooperate with the House committee investigating the January 6th selfie fest at the U.S. Capitol. And for that refusal, the House recommended they be held in criminal contempt by the Department of Justice. But while the move by the House is the same, the differences between Meadows and Bannon is vast and important. Consider Bannon, whom we don't like over here at CNN because he's looking to get more populist candidates elected and primary out more establishment GOP figures across the country. This is a man who built a career lobbing rhetorical bombs at Republican establishment. He was and is a self-confessed political provocateur, focused primarily on stirring things up and making the seat of power uncomfortable for whoever holds it. Yes, Bannon became part of Trump's administration, but it was short-lived, and as most things do involving Trump and Bannon, ended badly. On the day he was removed from office, Bannon pledged that we will still have a huge movement and we will make something of this Trump presidency, but that presidency is over. It'll be something else. It's not surprising, then, that a guy who has contempt for established Washington institutions at the heart of his belief system thumbed his nose at a subpoena from Congress and is willing to risk criminal penalties to keep from testifying in front of the selfie fest. Meadows, well, isn't that? This is a man who, prior to his work with Trump in the White House, spent 4 terms representing North Carolina in the House. While Meadows always fashioned himself as something of a renegade in Congress, he was nonetheless a sitting member of Congress, which makes what has transpired over the last few weeks, culminating in Tuesday's vote, all the more important. First, consider Meadows. His decision to cooperate, then cease cooperation, and then sue the January 6th committee is a far bigger deal than most people seem to think. Meadows knows intimately the House's role in oversight. He himself was often pushing for just that oversight during the Obama years. To not only reverse course on the cooperation with the committee, but then also sue it represents a massive betrayal of the institution he once served in. Oh no, he's breaking the rules. He's not doing what he's supposed to be as an establishment Republican. What do we do? What do we do? Well, now consider this from all perspectives of the House. Like him or hate him, Meadows is someone that the vast majority of these members know personally. It's not at all like Bannon, a guy who they've likely seen only on TV, and who they know holds nothing but disdain for them. Meadows was in the club once, and it's a relatively exclusive club. While that reality likely explains why just two members of Congress who aren't Democrats, Wyoming Rep. Liz Cheney and Illinois Rep. Adam Kinzinger voted to refer the Meadows contempt charges to the Justice Department. The reality is that the majority of the House, yes, Democrat-controlled one, just said that one of their own needs to be indicted for lack of cooperation. Yeah, this is basically, we don't like Bannon because he was mean, and he says mean things on TV, but we're supposed to like Meadows, and why is Meadows stopping cooperating? He was our best chance at getting getting Trump behind bars. Let's read one from CBS. Jim Jordan texted Mark Meadows to argue Pence could block election certification. From Zach Hudak. On January 5th, Congressman Jim Jordan sent a text message to then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows that argued that the certification of the 2020 election could be blocked by the Vice President. On January 6, 2021, Vice President Mike Pence, as President of the Senate, could call out all electoral votes that he believes are unconstitutional, as well as no electoral votes at all, the text message read. Jordan's office confirmed on Wednesday that the text message had come from him after the House Select Committee investigating the Selfie Fest revealed a portion of the message on Monday, but a spokesperson for Jordan said the message shown by the committee was incomplete. It had not been in fact written by Jordan, but by Joseph Schmitz, a D.C. lawyer and former Defense Department Inspector General. Mr. Jordan forwarded the text to Meadows, and Mr. Meadows certainly knew it was a forward, said Jordan's communications director, Russell Dye. In a meeting the committee held on Monday to advance criminal contempt motion against Meadows for not sitting for a deposition, Congressman Adam Schiff argued that the text messages show why it's important for the panel to talk to Meadows. Look, at the time, and of course, remember that nothing bad happened, freest and fairest election in history, more votes than Barack Obama, honk honk. At the time, there were still a lot of questions about a lot of the states. And I'm a little bit unwilling to say that they should have been certified at the time. In fact, there were still ongoing investigations and ongoing court cases when all this happened. I would not be opposed to sitting back here and saying, hey, let's wait for a minute and let's see what's going on with this. But that's not how politics works, and it is a big club, and Pence is from the inside. A lot of people are saying that he could run again for president in 2024. I don't think so. In fact, if the Donald runs again, I would guarantee that Pence wouldn't be by his side. Technically and legally speaking, Pence went down the right route. It was supposed to be a rubber stamp and go. But I don't know that I would have counted the votes for states that weren't ready to come out and say, hey, we're still looking at some stuff. We've got some problems. Not that there were any problems, of course. In a simulation, there were problems. No fraud. Nothing bad happened. Most popular president in history. Honk honk. More votes than Barack Obama. Honk honk. Best loved. Most loved. Highest approval rating ever. Honk honk. But that's what we see off that. Apparently I have 2 Daily Wire in a row. In fact, I'm actually going to switch that so I don't. More government stuff here. Levine calls for disbarment of Adam Schiff, blasts thug Elizabeth Warren over court packing demands. From Charles Creatz. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam B. Schiff has gone litigiously rogue for long enough in his official capacity. It's time for either Republicans on Capitol Hill or individual citizens to petition the California State Supreme Court's ethics arm to consider revoking his law license, Mark Levine told Fox News on Wednesday. Levine was reacting to the news that Schiff, a California Democrat, had doctored evidentiary text message from former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows to Rep. Jim Jordan the day of the prior Capitol riots. Jordan had forwarded a legal memo to Trump on January 5th of 2021 in regards to certifying the 2020 election counts, according to the Federalist. A Democratic spokesman for the House, the January 6th committee, told the Federalist it inadvertently had added extra punctuation to one of the messages and regrets the error. Levine told Hannity that this was not the first time that Schiff, who read aloud the text aloud on the record via video conference, had purposely run afoul of ethics or standard procedures. When it comes to Schiff doctoring evidence, Schiff is a lawyer and has a license in the state of California and maybe other places, says Levine. Rather than just us whining about this reprobate and unethical hack, let's do something about it. Lawyers are not free to doctor evidence, particularly when they're doctoring evidence for the purpose of putting people in prison. Levine called on Republicans or everyday citizens to file complaints in Sacramento. I'd ask that Republicans in Congress, but any citizen can do it, with the ethics arm of the Supreme Court of California to seek the license of Adam Schiff, he said. So, as far as the doctoring of evidence, looks like he has admitted to this. I've not been able to find anything green check verified to it. They mentioned the Federalist had talked about it, and I do have an article's worth investigating, but this is the closest to a green check verified source that I could get to find to confirm that something had happened. Otherwise, you're just hearing from like the Federalist or the Stormer or something like that. So, as far as that goes, looks like he did admit to it, and yes, I mean, if he did, and he's trying to put people into prison, then yes, there should be no law license for Schiff. He shouldn't be able to do that. Nobody should. From the Blaze. AOC biscuit once again. AOC almost has an honest discussion about civil asset forfeiture. From Blaze staff. Recently, the Honorable and Venerable Alexandria Ocasio-Chavez addressed the horrors of civil asset forfeiture during a House hearing where she criticized the common police practice. Congress is now talking about civil asset forfeiture. Pat Gray said on Tuesday's episode of Pat Gray Unleashed, Pat, a staunch critic of asset forfeiture, often covers news stories on the topic, and he gets fired up every time. Let's listen to her, though.
Congress is now talking about civil asset forfeiture. Is that amazing? Thank you. Let's do more than talk, though. Let's discussion. But here's AOC talking about it.
Civil forfeiture means that the government, law enforcement, etc., is allowed to take away your property, often your car or even your home, without an arrest, without criminal charges,
right,
and without ever going to court, correct?
Yes.
That is correct.
And as long as the police can claim that they believe this property is in some way connected to a crime.
Yeah, because the dog said so.
Yeah, the dog hit on it.
The dog hit on it.
We've already gone over the Constitution.
Yeah, right. But Alexandria, the dog went right up to the suitcase.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we took the money.
Yep.
Because the dog
hit
kind of went nuts on it.
Yeah.
Okay, and well, the dog liked it. The dog was smelling it. Smelled something there.
Yeah, it's Article 4, Section 5. The dog hit on it.
Okay,
section.
All right, there you go. Okay. I think that was the Gouverneur Morris clause.
Yeah.
James Madison was struggling with, okay, what should I put here on this next one? What's the next thing we
Well,
should
you don't
be able
really
to-
need something right there.
And then Gouverneur
James.
Morris said, hey,
Goof
Jim, you know what we should do is take money from people if a dog hits on their property. So AOC talking about civil asset forfeiture in a negative way,
I love it.
amazingly enough. She actually told a story about somebody who got caught up in that whole machine.
The vast majority of civil forfeiture cases, the government is driving away cars, kicking people out of their homes for claimed suspicion, but not even the person that has this property needs to be connected to any of these crimes. This happens without
Right.
arrest, without criminal charges. So, Professor Bruley, what you see in your practice essentially is the combination of the inherent biases and, frankly, institutional racism and classism of our criminal system.
Oh, there it
Asset
is.
Forfeiture means it's disproportionately poor people, low-income people, and people of color that are having their property
Pause it.
seized.
I've not seen a single person of color while we've been talking about this. Have we? Have we come across one? I don't think so. These are all the ones I can think of.
Boy, I don't know. I really don't know. I know we're about.
So, and I mean, we can't sit back and, because we do have some other stuff to go over here, we can't sit back and do the entire Pat Gray clip. I mean, I've never listened to Pat Gray before this, so I don't know anything about the guy. But looking at what we see here, too, I mean, we just saw this last week. The lady just walking through Dallas-Fort Worth Airport with $100,000 cash in a suitcase, and the dog hit on it. Just like the guy said, the dog hit on it. And now we have to come back up and we got to talk about, oh, well, we got to go take it all away. Because for whatever reason, and I don't understand this still, there's a law in Texas where you can't carry $1,000 cash on you. Which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's definitely something that needs to be gone over. But of course, Cortez has to come back, and I don't think she's against civil asset forfeiture. I'm sure that she would love to have the dog go and hit on Jeff Bezos' suitcase and say, okay, puppy, we're going to take the suitcase, okay? We have $1 million worth of stuff in there, and cash, and bonds, and things like that. We're going to take this over, and this is going to become a part of the government, okay? No, puppy? And we're going to redistribute this, okay? Because you're a criminal, and you didn't pay enough taxes, okay, puppy? She had to go back and make it all about race. She was there on a good point, and she had to go run it out and make it about Idpol. From the Daily Wire, CNN host, holding elections threatens our democracy. There is no video clip to this, and I wish that there was. I wish I could have seen this. From Ben Johnson, a CNN host is concerned that letting Americans vote for statewide office threatens democracy and is flogging Republicans for suggesting that the office be elected after it spent years ignoring George Soros' attempt to control it. Filling in Tuesday night for the recently fired Chris Cuomo on the abruptly renamed CNN Primetime, guest host Michael Smerconish, twice warned that Trump voters in his home state have launched a dark conspiracy to overturn elections by having statewide office holders elected by the people instead of appointed by the governor. And despite his concern over Republicans running for the office of Secretary of State, which oversees election laws in each respective state, CNN apparently never mentioned the most concerted effort to capture this office, George Soros' Secretary of State project. Michael Smerconish brought the subject up during the now abbreviated handoff with Don Lemon at 10 p.m. after Lemon said that he questioned the integrity of people who supported election integrity. I'm not really sure if that really matters, if they want to believe in voter fraud, or if they actually do believe it, he said. Well, they're taking action on it, replied Smerconish. He said the fact that a sizable percentage of Republican constituents harbor doubts about the 2020 election gives them the power to go into a state like Pennsylvania and say, you know that Secretary of State position? Let's make it an elected gig instead of an appointed job. Smirkonish did not explain how holding more elections would thwart the democratic process. He had raised the topic earlier in the show with David Lenhart of the New York Times, a former newspaper. Lenhart warned that Republicans are seeking ways to make it easier for them to overturn election results after it happens. For example, my home state, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, there is a move afoot to make the Secretary of State an elected official, said Smirkonish. That's what you're talking about. Yes, replied Lenhart. Although he immediately walked his statement back, noting the mere fact of making the Secretary of State an elected position is not in and of itself threatening to democracy. There are many places where it's an elected position. I believe it's an elected position here. Voters democratically elect the Secretary of State in 35 states, including California, Massachusetts, and Vermont. Lenhart also said that limiting mail-in ballots is not a radical stance, and that assuring ballot integrity by passing voter ID law is a legitimate thing for the government to do. Despite the CNN host's concern over the partisan leanings of the state election officials, the network seems to have dedicated no coverage whatsoever to George Soros' campaign to elect Democrat-friendly candidates as Secretary of State in swing states. So this is not completely what the headline makes it out to be, and the headline was as clickbaity as you can fucking get. But to look back at this and to think, okay, we're supposed to be a democracy according to Democrats, and democracy is supposed to be a good thing, so why would holding more elections be a bad thing? Unless they do have some honk-honk in mind. I don't know. But we'll see what happens with that. From Fox 6, Jill Biden visits Waukesha Children's, Wisconsin, after parade attack. From Jason Colby, First Lady Dr. Jill Biden paid respects to victims of the Waukesha Christmas parade, meeting with several survivors and families of some who were killed on Wednesday. The First Lady went to the memorial in Waukesha Veterans Park, where many have left flowers, teddy bears, and candles in honor of the 6 people killed, and more than 60 who were injured. A moment of silence in a heartbroken city. Biden shared a message of support. There's no logic to this loss. It feels especially unthinkable that it happened at a Christmas parade, Biden said. All of America mourns with Waukesha.
Good evening. I'm Sean Riley, Mayor of the City of Waukesha. I want to thank you all for being here. During the last 3.5 weeks, we were witness to a horrific tragedy, and we were also witness to our community coming together and supporting one another. I am thankful for our...
We're going to skip ahead to the good doctor, shall we?
Thank you,
Who's...
Doug. After this tragedy...
Who, by the way, before we get in, I want to point out the fact that she's the only person in Waukesha who's wearing a mask. Just wanted to point that out.
It's impossible not to ask why. But the truth is that there is no logic to this loss. It feels especially unthinkable that it happened at a Christmas parade. All of America mourns with Waukesha. In the Gospel of Luke, the Christmas story begins not with Mary, but with the birth of John the Baptist, who came, as we're told, to testify to the light. Hope had been born, but the people needed a prophet to help open their hearts, just as the Magi needed a star to guide them towards the manger. When
Okay,
we
where are we going with this?
In the dark, we often need someone to turn our eyes to the dawn.
Are you going to say that your
There is
husband is the
sorrow
Messiah?
Here in Waukesha and throughout our country, with so many lives lost in the devastating tornadoes last week, families that the President is visiting today, with the precious children of Oxford, Michigan, who will never have the chance to graduate. with every family making its way through this season with an empty chair and a broken heart. And yet today, we are gathered to testify to the light. We are here to tell the stories of the lives that inspired us and changed us, that helped shape this community. Ginny.
Okay. I'm going to tell you right now, if you're going to downplay this tragedy by saying, okay, well, we have to go back and focus on the lives, and no. Get this woman off the stage. But there she went to Waukesha to do so. She should probably have stayed in Milwaukee. Her husband was met with shouts of "Let's go Brandon" in Kentucky as he surveys the storm damage. This is from Ryan Saavedra. Democrat President Biden was met with shouts of "Let's go Brandon" on Wednesday as he surveyed the damage from a recent tornado storm in Kentucky that left dozens dead and caused billions of dollars worth of damage. Let's watch.
Brandon! Go, Brandon!
Not as impressive as I thought it would be. I thought that he would be completely shouted down, but, you know, I was hoping. And of course it's Breitbart, so every one voice coming up here is that's a win. This person just wanted to get on camera. The anti-Biden praise became an internet sensation in October after an NBC reporter at NASCAR Xfinity Series race incorrectly reported that fans in the stand were chanting "Let's go Brandon" following a victory by driver Brandon Brown when they were really shouting "Fuck Joe Biden," Fox News reported. It had since become a wildly popular anti-Biden rallying cry, breaking out at concerts, sporting events, and even churches. Most popular president in history, folks, more votes than even Barack Obama. I don't really know what it was that they expected to do a week later at this point. But he had to go. He had to come back out there. After the rebuilding efforts were already going through, he had to go down there and go and have a look. From the Blaze. CNN wants to know why Psaki bothers to call on Fox News. Why should they even be able to take part in legitimate press briefing? Wow. Well, you can see why Democrats hate the freedom of the press. And why Barack Obama was putting so many journalists in jail and combing their phone records, can't you? The folks at CNN are obsessed with Fox News. Maybe it's the fancy set. Could be the attractive hosts. Perhaps it's the FNC's dominance in the ratings. Whatever it is, CNN is constantly harping on Fox News. Brian Stelter and Oliver Darcy have made critiquing Fox a career. So it comes as no surprise this week that host Don Lemon brought on Stelter and S.E. Cupp to complain about Fox News even being allowed to be in the White House press room. Why does Jen Psaki continue to call on Fox in the briefing room? Lemon asked Cupp while praising the White House for being very courteous and kind toward Fox News. He went on to demand to know why Fox should even get to be in the same room as real reporters. If your network is promoting BS and lies about what's actually happening in the country, and helping to inspire and incite an insurrection, why should they even be able to take part in a legitimate press briefing and legitimate journalism? Cupp naturally agreed with the host's accusations. Yeah, it's so tough. There are reporters still at Fox, very few are getting airtime, and the last good one left the building, she said, referring to Chris Wallace's recent departure. Oh my god, the propaganda off this fucking network. Jesus. The problem with any good reporter left at Fox is that the primetime people contradict everything they say, she continued. So you can report something like COVID is real or the election wasn't stolen, but just isn't going to be contradicted in primetime. And that just makes you wonder what else you're being told as a Fox viewer that these people don't even believe in. Lemon asked Stelter why the White House would allow Fox to pretend in the briefing room like they're a real news organization. Oh, I don't know. Because the press room probably wants to have the appearance that there's actually a question being asked, not just, oh, how is Major doing right now, Jen Psaki? Is he ever going to come back to the White House? Hey, what kind of ice cream are they having in the White House tonight? That's why. And Ducey does the same thing that everybody else in the press briefing did to McEnany, other than Ducey. Ducey is doing his Jim Acosta impression. Is all that he's doing. Freedom of the press, though, right? Kamala Harris, another one from the Daily Wire from us. Harris mocked after trying to show how to use electric car charging station. Legitimately stupid. From Daily Wire News. Vice President Harris was mocked online Monday after attempting to demonstrate how to use an electric car charging station in Prince George's County, Maryland, as she seemingly struggled to understand how she would know the car was actually being charged once it was plugged in. And there's no sound or fumes, Harris said after plugging the car in. For all of us who are used to filling our tank, well, you can usually smell it. If you could smell the gas tank being filled, there's a bigger problem. And you can hear it, and you can hear the guzzling sound. None of that. So how do you know it's actually working? Let's watch.
It's plugged in, so is it plugged into just a normal electric socket, right?
Yes, normally it's a 240 volt, but you can go ahead and plug in, and
okay.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we are.
That's it.
And there's no sound or fume.
There is nothing.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's
so
all there
for
is
all of
to
us
it.
who are used to
Every morning
to filling our tank, you usually can smell it and you can hear it. You can hear the guzzling sound.
Right.
None of that.
None of
so
that.
how do I know it's actually working?
It is. So typically, once you wave the card.
Okay, I was being facetious when I did the Kamala cackle for this, and she's actually fucking doing it! I didn't watch this video prior. I read the transcript, I didn't watch the video.
It's actually charging, so...
But how would I know that? Tell me how I would know that.
So typically, excuse me.
Yeah.
So typically you come in, you wave this card, and then what it would do is it would authenticate, and then the light turns green.
How would I know it's working? Some notable responses to the clip included Buzz Patterson, commentator, I just can't imagine how this person is our vice president. Ian Miles Strong, Kamala Harris has never gassed up any of her own vehicles. Here she struggles with an EV, he continued. This woman is legitimately stupid. Ian, of course, is still Ray. Quinn Nelson says, very good technique here. Wouldn't want the electrons to spray all over the ground in case it fell out. I like that, that's funny. Aja Smith says, you would think this was an SNL skit. Jeremy Munson, state rep, says, the guzzling sound is taxpayer dollars being sucked out of our wallets. So, I will give Harris a little bit of credit for this one, because I actually probably would be thinking the same thing. I don't know that I would say it out loud, but I would probably be thinking the same thing, because as myself, whether it be in the left side of the truck bed, in the right corner panel of the car, or under the license plate in a couple of vehicles that I've owned. You always know, you always feel that pumping liquid coming up through the hose. Pouring in there, you hear the sound of the pump. You don't necessarily smell the gasoline anymore. Evaporative emission systems have taken care of that. So you don't necessarily see a lot of that anymore, but you still see a bunch of stuff here. So it would still occur to me like, okay, is this really working? Did I do something wrong here? How would I know if there was a problem? Which usually you know there's a problem when you smell the smell. But just coming out here with the uncomfortable Kamala cackle. Like usual. Because she has no idea what the hell is going on. And this is something she's supposed to be advocating for. To everybody. We need to demand and force you to have an electric vehicle and take your old gas guzzler Prius and crush it up to make more electric vehicles. Some more stuff coming off here. I get some more random stuff towards the end of this, plus we'll do thing I like and thing that I hate. But here we have, down here, Brian Nichols tweets out this screenshot here. Brian Nichols is a real big fan of the phrase, "Do you get it yet?" because he finds all this obvious stuff that he's been warning about forever. Brian Nichols is a great source of information. If you don't follow Brian Nichols or listen to his show, you should. Maybe he'll have me on. If I say it enough, maybe he'll have me on sometime. I want to be on Brian's show. Brian's been on mine before. I want to be on his. Somebody tweet at him. It would sound desperate coming from me. Somebody tweet at Brian Nichols, at bnicholsliberty. But his picture here, Facebook. In a court filing defending itself from defamation charges, Facebook said that its fact checks are merely statements of opinion rather than statements of fact, said Meta's lawyers, according to the filings made available at whatsupwiththat.com. Our fact checks are statements of opinion rather than statements of facts. Do you get it yet? Do you see it yet? Let me say that one more time. Facebook said that its fact checks are merely statements of opinion rather than statements of fact. There you go. Enjoy. Thank you, Brian. From the New York Post, Sony to end the Dr. Oz show next month amid host Senate run. From Alexandria Steingrad. The Dr. Oz show is coming to an end next month as the host, Dr. Mehmet Oz, prepares for a run for the U.S. Senate seat in Pennsylvania. Dr. Oz announced his run for retiring U.S. Senator Pat Toomey's seat late November, shortly thereafter. Fox station group said it was yanking his show from the New York and Pennsylvania. The show, which is currently in its 13th season, will officially end on January 14th, series distributor Sony Pictures Television said on Monday. During its time on the air, the Dr. Oz show won 10 Daytime Emmy Awards. It will be replaced by The Good Dish, a new one-hour syndicated cooking and talk show hosted by Oz's daughter and MasterChef Junior judge Daphne Oz, food writer Gail Simmons, and Food Network chef Jamaica Paseo. Now, I want to point this out because this really looks like this is punitive towards Dr. Oz, but if it was punitive towards him, I don't believe that they'd be giving his daughter the show off of this. I do believe that this is for campaign finance violation purposes to make sure that Sony is running above and beyond the board. I'm sure that Oz probably said, yeah, if I'm going to go run for Senate, I probably can't do this. So I think this is probably a mutual disagreement. I know nothing about the Dr. Oz show. I didn't even know what Dr. Oz's first name was until a couple days ago. Until he announced his Senate run, I had no idea what his name was. I'd heard the name Dr. Oz show, I'd never seen it, I'd never talked about it. I knew nothing about it, but if that's what he wants to do, then yeah, for Sony to continue the show on a national platform, especially when he's running for a statewide seat, that would be a conflict of interest, I think, in most situations. So, Godspeed, Dr. Oz, and I hope you win. From The Independent, Harvard's Larry Lessig joins students' hunger strike calling for action on voting rights. From Josh Bowden. Harvard University professor and longtime elections reform activist Larry Lessig joins a group of college students from Arizona on a hunger strike outside the White House on Monday as the group seeks to pressure Democrats to act on voting rights legislation that is completely unconstitutional. Oh, I just saw that, Ron. I just saw that. The strike, which has entered its 8th day, is now includes about 18 participants, including Mr. Lessig, after a handful ended their personal efforts due to medical issues. Activists and a few supporters rallied in Lafayette Square on Monday and spoke about the urgent need to pass reforms that aimed at protecting access to the vote, stopping gerrymandering, unless it's done by Democrats, and reforming dark money rules. Several, including Lessig, warned that the next few months were pivotal as Democrats face an unfavorable midterm map, exacerbated by recently redrawn districts in some states that are expected to cement GOP control in some areas and give the party an edge for control over several swing district seats. The threat is that this election in 2022 will cement the U.S. as a minoritarian democracy, Professor Lessig told The Independent in an interview. What this means is that a minority of America now has the power to block a majority, he continued, adding, "We've evolved a democracy where just over a fifth has a veto over anything that we could do. Good. You know why? Because it stops anything that you could do, and if you want to get anything done, that means that it has to be so overwhelmingly popular that the other side likes it too. Otherwise, it refers out to the states, you fucking mook. You're a law professor. You should know this. You dumb fuck." Right now, by the way, would be the perfect time to drive past Lafayette Square with a taco truck. Well, we're talking about Ron. This is my punishment for you, Ron. Now we're going to talk about one from your favorite politician. One from your favorite publication by your favorite politician. From Bloomberg Equality. New York City Mayor-elect Adams appoints first female police commissioner. From Bola Akanibi and Elaine Chen. New York Mayor-elect Eric Adams named Keychant Sewell police commissioner, marking the first time a woman will lead the largest police department in the U.S. Sewell, 49, is the Nassau County Chief of Detectives. The Queens native will replace Dermot Shea, a career New York Police Department cop appointed by de Blasio in December of 2019. "I'm ready," Sewell said in a press conference on Wednesday at Queensbridge Houses, a public housing complex in Long Island where she lived as a child. "I will have the backs of my officers. They must have the backs of the public." Sewell graduated from FBI National Academy and served as the lead chief negotiator and commanding officer for the FBI's negotiation team before spending more than 2 decades at the Nassau County Police Department on Long Island. She pledged to drive down violent crime, focus on community policing, and not overlook petty crimes, known as the broken windows theory, espoused by former NYPD Commissioner Bill Bratton. Standing next to Sewell, Adams called her a personification of emotional intelligence, swatting away criticism that Sewell doesn't have experience running a police force as large as New York City's. Who does? It's the biggest one ever. If you're coming into it brand new, you don't have experience running a police department as large as New York City's. Adams said he intentionally wanted to veer away from approaches of the past. "I need a visionary," Adams said, "someone who's ready to transform our police department." Well, I guess we'll see what happens and where it goes. I guess we'll see what happens with it. I hear that Eric Adams is an upstanding guy. I don't know. I've never met him. I've not seen enough news articles about him or his policies to see, but from what they tell me, he's an upstanding guy and he makes good decisions. So we'll see what happens with that and where it goes. Ron DeSantis. From the recount, Ron DeSantis quotes MLK while introducing the Stop Woke Act to ban critical race theory. Let's listen.
You think about what MLK stood for. He said he didn't want people judged on the color of their skin, but on the content of their character. You listen to some of these people nowadays, they don't talk about that. You think about what MLK stood for.
Oh no! Evil Republican Ron DeSantis quoted MLK! Reading on from the New York Post. DeSantis introduces Stop Woke Act to ban critical race theory from schools and workplaces. And, of course, you find all the people saying that critical race theory doesn't exist. So they shouldn't have a problem with banning it. Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis took another swipe against critical race theory. Wednesday, introducing a bill to ban the controversial curriculum from K-12 schools in the state. The Stop Wrongs Against Our Kids and Employees Act would allow parents to file lawsuits against school districts they suspect of teaching critical race theory and recover attorney fees when they prevail, the governor said during a press conference. Our legislation will defund any money for K-12 going to CRT consultants, DeSantis said. No taxpayer dollar should be used to teach our kids to hate our country or hate each other. Absolutely right. They should be. They should be learning about how to read, how to write. Now, they should be allowed to go and research some of the more dark parts of the U.S. history. They should be. Because they should have all the facts and draw their own conclusions. But part of the problem that I see with critical race theory is that they don't want people to have all the facts. They just want to have their one little narrative out there that says that all white people are bad. And critical race theory is so bad that the people who are advocating for it say that it's not even there. That what we're seeing isn't even critical race theory. So what's the problem with banning it if it's not there? Why don't we keep it from being there? I don't know. I am not an oppressor. I am not an oppressor. Children should learn to see people for who they are, not what they look like. So we'll see where that goes. From the Daily Wire, high school steer students to alleged porn producer for scholarship. From Luke Rosiak. Multiple high schools are encouraging their students to apply for a scholarship by sending their name, phone number, and physical and email addresses to a doctor who surrendered his medical license after being repeatedly accused of meeting young, aspiring medical professionals online and tricking them into filming porn that he sold or posted to shame them. Wow, this guy sounds like an upstanding guy. In May and June, 2 university students separately sued Philip T. Sobash, an Arkansas doctor, saying he's a serial sexual predator who convinces unwitting young women into sending nude images to him and then posts the images with the victims' names and other personal identifying information onto notorious websites, inciting others to anonymously harass and attack his victims. He sells the images for personal gain, but more than that, he enjoys harming his victims. On August 5th, the Arkansas Medical Board forwarded information about Sobach to the FBI and encouraged the physician to utilize a chaperone at all times when seeing patients and ordered him to come before the board in October, according to medical board meeting minutes. On October 7th, the board unanimously voted to accept the surrender of Sobach's Arkansas medical licenses in lieu of continuing with the investigative process, according to board records. And now, Sobach has set up a scholarship fund that encourages high school and college students to personally contact him in the hopes that they will be the winner of his scholarship, a payment of $1,000 awarded to one student. Dude, that barely covers your books for one semester. Numerous high schools and colleges promoted the opportunity. Fort Vancouver High School in Vancouver, Washington, for example, instructed high schoolers with an interest in becoming a medical doctor too. Please email the following information along with your essay in .doc format to Dr. Sobash at drphilipsobachscholarship.com. And see, I had a conversation in the spa with a guy last night talking about he might actually be in the audience right now. So if you're here, welcome. But I was talking to him last night about researching in charities because, you know, we were talking about, with the haircut, that's what started it. Because there was a guy in the spa in a sweatshirt. Which that dude is hardcore if he's in the spa in a sweatshirt. But when he left, I said, dude, that dude is hardcore in a sweatshirt in the spa. I'm having problems being in a spa with my hair as long as it is right now. But, you know, growing it for charity. And we started talking about researching charities and why I won't give to the red bucket anymore. Because I've researched the charity and I know how much is getting skimmed off the top. Why I'm not giving to Locks of Love, because they sell the wigs, they don't donate them, they don't give them away. And researching charity off of this. And these schools should be researching these charities, scholarships or otherwise. And what is a scholarship but a charity? A way for somebody who wouldn't normally be able to go to school to be able to go to school without incurring massive amounts of debt. If you're going to recommend a scholarship somewhere, you should research it. You should know what's at the top. Always. Always, always, always should know what's at the top. Although I'm not surprised that Prairie du Chien is one of them that's having a problem. Because that's in pretty well liberal Dane County adjacent. It's not in Dane County, but it's Dane County adjacent. I know where Prairie du Chien is. Always know where your money's going and where it's coming from. Otherwise, you send student information to a porn producer. Good job. Another one out of New York here. From Patriot Takes, a group of 30-plus anti-vaxxers claiming to be doing a sit-in, refused to check in at the host stand, skipped waiting customers, and sat themselves across from multiple tables at a cheesecake factory in New York City. Let's watch.
Like even before the mandate.
But that's
before
not
the mandate.
That's not true.
We're getting off topic.
Yeah.
So
That's not true.
We're here to just tell you. We're not doing anything right now. We're telling you guys. The manager has now asked you to leave, right? So now that's why we have to speak to someone in charge, because you guys can go talk amongst yourselves. They're asking you to leave, and if you guys
They actually said they weren't going to serve. They didn't access to leave.
That's their decision. If you guys refuse to leave, we're going to give you, every opportunity to leave. But if you eventually refuse to leave when we tell you to leave, we will be arresting you for criminal trespass.
It's not criminal trespass. We're here to access the business during normal business hours. We are invitees of a public accommodating business. We are not committing a crime. We are here to eat. We're here to access the business. It cannot be criminal trespass. I'm telling you, I gotta let you know, because if you falsely arrest any of us, you will be held liable.
I'm just telling you.
Don't say sir. Listen to what I'm telling you.
We're not asking you to leave.
I'm listening. I'm trying to get you to understand what I'm trying to tell you.
I have not told you to leave, right? We have not told you to leave.
Right, but
I'm telling
we
you,
cannot be arrested for trespassing. We are not trespassing.
If we tell you to leave and you refuse to leave, I'm telling you that we're going to start arresting people for criminal trespassing.
But it's not trespassing. It will be a false arrest.
When you say that, one person, you guys, you over here told us you were representing us right now. I'm talking to them for now. So please, that's all we have to tell you. You guys decide what you want to do. All right.
But you are aware of what criminal trespassing actually is, and
you
we are
will
not
be
criminally
arrested for
trespassing.
criminal trespass if you.
We're here during normal business hours
we tell you
to access the business and the services.
Okay, that's
you
it.
cannot be trespassing.
I'm done explaining it.
Okay, good.
If
So
you
am
don't
I.
leave, when we ask you, we have not asked you to leave. The manager has asked you to leave.
But also, you are law enforcement.
leave.
The law dictates we have the right to be
manager has asked to
here.
leave.
You're not policy
So
enforcement.
at that, you're supposed to leave.
You're going to enforce their policy over the law?
Yeah.
Will you enforce their policy
You guys
over
have
the
a
law?
choice to make now, so please.
Well, you
figure out
do
what
too.
you're doing, okay?
You swore oath to
you guys figure out
all
what
right.
you're gonna do,
So
okay?
you're law enforcement, not policy enforcement. You have to enforce the law, not the policy.
Okay, all right. No. Listen, now we're.
There was so much wrong with that interaction, it's not even funny. Now, first off, the guy behind the camera is completely wrong. If the manager has asked you to leave, you are trespassing. And if the manager has asked you to leave and called the cops in there, you are trespassing. You come in, you made your statement. That's all well and good. You have been asked to leave private property. That's not a public business during normal operating hours. That is still private property. There's private property owned and operated by the Cheesecake Factory Company, who has the right to refuse service to anybody. Freedom of association. I don't agree with their policy, and I am not in any hurry to go give money to the Cheesecake Factory of it. But I'm not going to sit here and demand that I'm entitled to have a seat at a Cheesecake Factory because of some arbitrary rule, either. That guy was a scumbag. And I don't usually do this, but I applaud the professionalism of the police officer. Because it would have taken every part. If I had been charged with solving a property dispute between a manager, an owner, and somebody trespassing on the property, it would have been hard for me to not slap cuffs on that dude. Are you law enforcement or are you policy enforcement? It doesn't matter. You're trespassing. You made your point. You got it on the news. Reading from Insider, anti-vaxxers storm a New York cheesecake factory in protest that ends in 6 arrests. From Francis Augustine, an anti-vaccination protest in a New York cheesecake factory ended with 6 arrests and threats of further action from the anti-vax group. A group of people who oppose COVID-19 vaccinations and mandates entered the Cheesecake Factory in Queens on Tuesday night, declining to show proof of vaccination and refusing to leave. When asked to the restaurant police and NYPD spokesperson told Insider, "There's another typo there. That's why that sentence made no sense." New York City requires proof of vaccination for the coronavirus to enter and patronize dining establishments, gyms, and other indoor businesses. Vaccine and mask mandates have been a controversial issue in the U.S. during the coronavirus pandemic, with opponents saying it infringes on their personal freedoms. Meantime, enforcement of mask and vaccine regulations are often left to retail and hospitality workers. And that's the problem, too. That enforcement is left to retail workers. There is a meat shop in town here. I've sung its praises before, by the way. There's a butcher shop in town that had a sign that said masks required on the door as you walked in. You are required to wear a mask in this store on the door as you walked in. As you walk in, every clerk in the building is unmasked, and most of them have just some sort of haphazard mask, usually a gaiter around their necks, because they don't care. You can walk in there not even trying. Not even with the gaiter around your neck, or the bandana, or whatever the fuck around your neck. And they didn't say a word. You have the option, as the business owner, to enforce the law, or to be a sort of speakeasy in there. Cheesecake Factory, especially with its corporate backing, has chosen not to be a speakeasy. They have chosen to enforce the rules. Now, you should make your decision whether or not to eat at Cheesecake Factory because of that. And I gave an exorbitant amount of money last year to the particular meat shop in town here, because I knew that they were on the up and up. They were on the based spectrum. They were in the based department. And I felt good about giving them money. I felt good about spending money in that store because they understood that they had the right to not enforce the rules that the state has put down there. They put the sign up, they did the little signage and shit like that, but once you were in there, nobody gave a fuck. That's what we see off that. Stephen King had a historically bad take. Lawyering up is what members of organized cartels do, using due process as a holding action. Lose appeal, run out the clock. This is how Trump and his cronies are dealing with their political afterlives. To which I replied, right off the top, you have the right to an attorney. If you can afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. The right to have an attorney, to have a mediator between you and the tyrannical state, so sacred, courts generations ago agreed that they can provide somebody free of charge. That is one of the fundamental freedoms of this country, is that you have the right to have, not only do you have the right to have an attorney present, they cannot deny you having an attorney present to come back here and talk to that. They cannot lock you up, and this is part of what's going on with the Selfie Fest people too. They cannot lock you up and deny you access to your legal counsel. Because that's what the Crown did. If they wanted your property, if they wanted your this, if they wanted your that, if they wanted your colony, they came out with some trumped up charge, told the Lawyers Guild that the Lawyers Guild was not allowed to represent you to the government. and you went into prison without due process. That fundamental ability to have an arbitrator between you and the government is so sacred that almost universally across the country, court systems said, we will provide a lawyer for you. We will find a way to get a lawyer out there. We've got a public defender's office to make sure that there is somebody in your corner as you stand against us. So sacred to the founders of this country and the people that came after them. And I'm sure the likes of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar and Nancy Pelosi would love right now for people to be able to not have legal representation if the government comes down on them. I'm sure a lot of local police departments would like that too. I'm sure that the local sheriff's department where I got the speeding ticket a couple weeks ago would love for me not to be able to have legal representation and for me to just pay the fine and walk out on it. But instead, now they're fighting with my lawyer. And usually I would at least go in and appear and get the fine dropped, take the points or whatever, because I done wrong. But that cop was a fucking dick. So yes, my lawyer will handle this one. Here's a little white pill for you. And this is the thing, when I first came out with this, the person who tweeted this out pointed out the fact that this is what happens when you do not comply. LA School Board delays enforcement of student vaccine mandate in fall of 2022. From Melissa Gomez. The LA School Board, Tuesday, to delay enforcement of its student COVID-19 vaccine mandates from January 10th to the fall of 2022, citing concerns over disrupting learning in the monumental task of transferring tens of thousands of students to an independent study. The decision came after Interim Superintendent Megan Riley laid out a plan Friday to push back the deadline because the district was confronted with the reality that about 28,000 students had not complied, and under the rules would be barred from in-person schooling and enrolled in independent study. Which means that they're at home, and the parents are seeing what they're teaching. They can't get those butts in the seats. And that's more important to them. The indoctrination away from their parents is more important to the LA School District than the vaccine mandate. If you do not comply, the government will fold. So do not comply. Good job. Absolutely good job. This one confused me a little bit. I think we might have to wrap it up after this one. Is there anything else that I want to make sure I get? There's one more after this. Actually, I'm going to wait on this one too, because I want to look into this a little bit more, because I don't completely understand what the purpose was behind this and why this was, but apparently Chauvinists pled guilty to the federal charges. And I want to know a little bit more before I talk about this one. So we're going to hold off on this one. I do want to grab this one, then we'll do thing that I like and thing that I hate. From CNN, 2 major airline CEOs question the need for masks on planes. Once again, stand up. Do not comply. If you do not comply, the government has no choice but to back down. From Chris Isidore, the CEOs of 2 of the nation's major airlines say they don't think wearing masks on planes does much to help limit exposure to the pinko fucking pox. The comments from American Airlines CEO Doug Parker, the nation's largest carrier, and Southwest CEO Gary Kelly came during a hearing about financial support that airlines received from the federal government in 2020 and 2021. But the topic of masks arose via a question from Roger Wicker, the ranking Republican on the Senate committee holding the hearing. I think the case is very strong that the masks don't add much. If anything, in the air cabin environment, it's very safe and high quality compared to any other indoor setting, said Kelly. Both Kelly and Parker, who have announced plans to retire as CEOs in the coming months, mentioned that high-grade HEPA air filters on planes capture virtually all airborne contamination, and air quality is helped by how frequently cabin air is exchanged with fresh air from outside the cabin. I concur, an aircraft is the safest place you can be, said Parker. It's true of all of our aircraft, they have the same HEPA filters and airflow. After hearing, American Airlines tried to walk back Parker's remarks. It issued a statement claiming his concurrence with Kelly was on point about the quality of the air in the aircraft cabin, not mask requirements. Sarah Nelson, the president of the Association of Flight Attendants, testified at the hearing that not all aircraft are equipped with the same quality of air filters. For example, some older planes do not have HEPA filters, she said. Well, refit them. Look at all that money you got from the government. Refit them. The mask requirement is still a source of controversy. Much of the steep rise in incidents involving unruly passengers over the last 2 years have revolved around passengers being ordered to wear masks. I think that's probably for the medical community to decide on rather than me, Nelson added. What I will add is that the studies that have been done on masks were done with mannequins that were sitting straight forward with masks on, not removing them, not eating. It is important to recognize that the safe, controlled environment on planes includes the HEPA filters that are not on all aircraft, she concluded. Masks on planes are required by the federal government following the guidance of the CDC. The DOT did not immediately respond to a request for comment on the testimony. Look, this is the thing. If you are concerned and you want to wear a mask, do so. In Wisconsin, in southern Wisconsin, there's almost 0.1% of the people wearing a mask at this point. No matter where you go. There's still a few here and there, but for the most part, it doesn't happen. In my church, there is one person who wears a mask. One single person who wears a mask. And it's mostly old people. One single person. Plus the minister and the people who are giving out the communion. They do that as well. I don't agree with that, but that's one thing. Going to the grocery store this week, I saw 2, and both times were fairly crowded. 2 people, and the entire time wearing masks. We should be in southern Wisconsin swimming in Omicron if we listen to the hype, but we're not. So at this point, it's time to make your own decision on it, whether you want to or not. All right. And with that, we're going to head out of here off the news for the day. But the last thing that we always do on a Thursday is a thing that I like and a thing that I hate. And typically a thing that I like has devolved into whatever I'm watching on Netflix for the time being, if I just started a new series or finished one. And this is one where I actually just finished one. So after getting out of the Clone Wars, I decided to go check up on a couple others that I'd promised people that I'd watch beforehand. And I'm in a show hole right now. I don't know what to watch next. But I just finished out The Squid Game. The Squid Game actually provides both, thing that I like and thing that I hate. But there was something else that I hated even more than this, on top of it. But this is on both sides. So The Squid Game is a Korean television show that was adapted, I believe, dubbed for a U.S. audience. It has to do with capitalism and debt, or so they say. And we'll go over that when it comes to the side of the thing that I hate side of it here. But I mean, the action was good, the acting was good. It was fairly well written drama. It was original, something that we don't see a lot anymore. It wasn't a rehash of a TV show from the 70s, as far as I know. And that might be. It actually might be a rehash of something from the 70s. But as far as I know, it's not a rehash of something from the 70s. It was actually an original story that I'm seeing for the first time. The actors did fairly well. There was good chemistry among them. You could tell who was going to be the villain. Unfortunately, you could tell who was going to have the plot armor. But it was fairly well written. I very much enjoyed it, what I did see off of it. And it was always fun to hear the different dialogue coming from people that didn't match what their lips were doing, because it was dubbed. So let's watch the trailer for Squid Game, and we'll talk about some of the things that I hate about it.
계신 여러분들은 모두 감당할 수 없는 빚을 지고 삶의 벼랑 끝에 서 계신 분들입니다. 게임에 참가를 원하지 않는 분은 지금 말씀해 주시길 바랍니다.
무궁화 꽃이 피었습니다입니다.
그 옛날에 어릴 때 하던 거 말이야?
사람을 그렇게 죽여놓고 6개의 게임을 모두 이긴 분들께는 저에게 상금이 지급됩니다.
눈 바짝 뜨고 계세요.
제일 센 중에부터 크게 살 길이.
애들 게임 규칙 단순해.
내가 무조건 이기게 해줄 테니까.
무슨 수로?
무슨 수를 써서든.
이러면 안 되는 거잖아! 우리끼리 이렇게 죽으면 안 되는 거잖아!
게임을 거부하는 참가자는 탈락으로 처리된다.
So, and for whatever reason, I picked up, and I didn't, again, watch it before, but the trailer that I picked up was in the original Korean. I promise it's dubbed. It's not subtitled, it's actually dubbed, so the voices that you'll hear, like, you can watch it while you're working on something else without having to read subtitles, which is what I did. That's, for the most part, when I was doing show notes for the Red Net show, that's what I was doing, was watching Squid Game over on this screen, while the show notes were in this screen. And my Twitter was over on this screen. It's a good series. One of the things that I hate about it, and this is where we roll into something that I hate. We're going to do a couple things that I hate. One of the things I hate about it is the reaction of what it is. Like, this was, according to the leftoids out there, this was supposed to be this massive indictment of capitalism. The reason that capitalism doesn't work. Because capitalism doesn't work because people who have, like, the main character had a gambling addiction and came into debt because of his gambling addiction. People who have an addiction or something of their own fault, well, the capitalists, all they do is you come out here and they kill people for fun. That's not what happened here. It's not capitalism's fault. It's not capitalism's fault either that you suck at capitalism. Nor is this, by the way, an argument against socialism either, by the way, which was one that the MAGA crowd tried to come back out and say, oh, this is more about socialism than anything else. No. This is about the inherent greed and mental health problems on a lot of these people who have found a way that can't spend on top of their means or have come from another. One of the women that's in the games is a defector from North Korea. And just gotten herself into debt, trying to get her family, the rest of her family, out of North Korea. Sometimes it is a situation where you look at this and you say, hey, all I want to do is do right for people. And you get caught up in stuff. So no, this is not an indictment of any particular economic system. It's more of a mental health thing than anything else. Something we do need to be focusing more on, mental health. Making sure people can deal with their addictions without harming themselves fiscally or personally. And also do make sure that, you know, we've got the opportunities out there that people can, instead of falling in on the hard times, pay off their debts and get out of this. This has nothing to do, though, with capitalism versus socialism, no matter how much the leftoids on Twitter try to tell you this. And it is, I do highly recommend it. It was really good. It was done well, it was written well, it was filmed well, there's a lot of gore, some of it's excessive, and there's some nudity and sex in it too, so don't watch it with the kiddies in the room. Alright, let's do a thing that I hate. Reading here from the Daily Wire. Somebody said the quiet part out loud. NPR commentator says men like me benefit from safe abortion access as they lead promiscuous lives. This made my blood boil when I saw this. from Ben Ziesloft. An opinion piece published by WBUR, Boston's NPR news station, argues that abortion is beneficial to men who want to pursue their career goals while leading a promiscuous sex life. The article, entitled Men Like Me Benefit from Safe Abortion Access, is written by political commentator and activist Kaivan Shroff. As he prepares to graduate law school, the 28-year-old argues that having a baby would derail his career. Then don't do the thing that makes the baby. This is not rocket sciences, you asshole. He quotes, "It would be a terrible time to have a baby. Don't get me wrong, I've always wanted to have kids. I love the relationship I have with my parents, and I can't imagine not getting to experience fatherhood. I think I'd be good at it. That said, I'm not in a relationship, I haven't built a nest egg, and frankly, after 2 years of global pandemic, I want to eke out and enjoy the last minute of my 20s. You greedy motherfucker. In too many ways, I'm unsettled." Admitting to having sex with several women throughout the past decade, Shroff then pushes the abortion as his right to prevent fatherhood in the case of unwanted pregnancy. You greedy asshole. We often talk about the ways access to birth control and safe abortion empowers women, and it does. I believe that safe access to abortion is a basic human right. On a human and policy level, it's infuriating to watch a partisan Supreme Court erode and threaten it, and to eliminate that right. Women's bodily autonomy should not be up for debate, but men like me also have long been the direct beneficiaries of safe... Oh my god, I can't believe I'm reading this out loud. Of safe abortion access. Giving women the choice not to carry unwanted pregnancies often means we too can delay parenthood until we are ready. My god! Since I've spent 10 of the past 11 years as a student, most of the women I've had sex with were also students, also progressive, and also not at a point in their lives where they were looking to or ready to have children. I try to share responsibility for birth control, and if a woman tells me she's on it, I also trust that. That's your first fucking mistake. I've made that mistake before, by the way. I didn't make it twice. And I look back on the first time with regret, by the way. A deep amount of regrets. I've told some people off camera about why I look back on it regret, but I have made that mistake. If she still got pregnant, however, through entirely her decision, I assume we would both want the same thing, an abortion. In longer-term relationships, we've had explicit discussions about this. Shroff acknowledges that he's scared by the prospect of losing access to legal abortion. What if I got a woman pregnant? What if she didn't want to continue the pregnancy? What could not get an abortion? Would we try to stay together even if it wasn't a fit? What kind of custody or visitation rights would we get if we weren't together? How would I provide for the child? Well, you're a lawyer. Would adoption really be a consideration, as Justice Amy Coney Barrett recently glibly suggested? If so, would a child face an abusive welfare system? The questions and worries are abound. Okay. Here's the... Oh, this makes my blood boil. Oh, this makes my blood boil. I am not a person to preach being chaste by any stretch of the imagination. I have no room in the world to preach chastity to people. After what I did between the ages of 23 and 29, I have no place in existence to preach chastity. Nothing. None. But there are things that you can do to make sure that the girl that you're with doesn't get pregnant, aside from an invasive surgery. As I said, of course, there's always the option. Don't stick that there unless you're ready to have a kid. And I'm not going to go into the details because this is being transmitted on YouTube and I think MK Ultra's kids are watching. But there are ways to not have kids while still putting that there. There are a lot of ways to do so. And the first one, I'm going to tell you right now, if she says she's on the pill and you're just meeting her, that's not a trustworthy thing. I'm sorry. I've made that mistake before. Oh, this boils my blood. Oh, this boils my blood. As a former person who was promiscuous, this boils my blood. Oh, this makes me mad. But it is what it is. And these are the people who are trying to change our progress, as it will, our societal function. But that's what we see off of that. We're going to head out of here. We're going to be done. We're going to finish this out. Oh, this boils my blood. Let's finish up for the day. Shall we? Where's the track? Where's the outro track? There it is. Alright, so now that my blood is boiling, I'm going to head out of here. We gotta take off, and I've got to get myself off to earn a living. And we'll see you guys next time over here on Contemporary. You guys make sure you come back and join me. Coming up here tomorrow morning, 7:15, for more Contemporary. Definitely come and check that out. Always welcome to everybody here, even opposing viewpoints. We always welcome those here, so come back and check us out here tomorrow for more of that. Come and hang out with the other people. By the way, do remember that if you're just lurking, get those last-minute messages in so I can say the special thank you, because tomorrow is Friday, and tomorrow is the special thank you day, so definitely come back and hang out with us tomorrow as well. Plus, we'll go over some of your live chat too tomorrow. And remember, if it is sufficiently bigoted, stupid, or hateful, it will raise the intellectual level of this program. And of course, we'll have to come back and read it on the air. Even if it is Susan bait. Come on, Susan. So come back and join us here tomorrow for more Contemporary. And by the way, join us on Monday as well, 5:30 p.m. Central Time, for my sit down and talk on the news with the wonderful Rachel Nix. I don't know why it's been so long since I've had her on this program. I've never had her on for the RedNet show. She was on the suicide prevention stream, but I've never had her on for RedNet. She is an amazing analyst. She is hilarious. It's going to be a great show. It's going to be a great couple hours coming up here on Monday night, 5:30 Central Time. So come and join us for that. I am very much looking forward to that one. I very much enjoy talking with Rachel Nix. She is funny. So come back here, join us here for that, or tomorrow morning for more Contemporary. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.